This is my blue collar buyer's guide for luxury watches. Being a blue collar person myself, I know that sometimes we don't always buy what we want, we buy what we can afford. So I just thought I would share some of my experiences, some of my purchasing experiences, what I have come to consider the do's, the don'ts, maybe share a few of my regrets, tell you why I regret them, and possibly if you spend 5 minutes with me, it may prevent you from making the same mistakes. So let's get into it. Okay, so to start with, let's first define what a luxury watch is. In my opinion, entry level, to get into what I would consider an entry level luxury watch, they're going to start at around about $1,000 and go up from there. That will be the perspective that I'm using moving forward. Now, this clearly is going to depend on your budget and what you would consider a luxury watch. Adjust accordingly. You may think luxury starts at $3,000. You may think it starts at $5,000. You may think it starts at $500. For me, I believe entry level starts at about $1,000. I kind of look at watches in the category of typically you would have a nice watch. It's going to be around $500. Entry level luxury starting at about $1,000. And then by the time you get to $3,000 and up, those are going to be luxury watches. And then what I call the ultra luxury, which is when you're talking about Patek, Vacheron, Rolex, typically $10,000 or above. So now that we have a place to start from, let's start with, and I'm guilty of not doing this, so always buy pre-owned. And the reason why I say that is because if you become a collector and you choose your pieces right, your money will almost always be safe. When you're talking about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 watches, to be honest, $10,000 and under, I can't think of a single watch at $10,000 you can walk into an AD and buy, set in your watch box, and 5 years from now turn around and get $10,000 for it. They don't exist. The only ones that I honestly can think of are a few lower end Rolexes, but you can't touch them. You can't walk into an AD and buy them, so it doesn't matter. Since this particular video is about blue collar buyers, if you've been saving or you've hit a milestone in your life and you're about to purchase that $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 watch, I would absolutely recommend going pre-owned. Say I have an Omega Speedmaster. That particular watch at the AD is about $7,100. I picked that watch up for $5,000 on the pre-owned market, and I could pretty much let that thing set in my watch box, even wear it on a daily, as long as you keep it in good shape, and always be able to turn around and get that $5,000 back if I decided to sell it, which I never would. With that said, one of the do's is absolutely always buy pre-owned. So, where do we pick them up at? I was in the seller forums on Facebook just a few days ago. I followed several brand forums, but this one happened to be the Breitling, and someone popped in with a question of where they should purchase. They had just purchased a brand new one and felt like they were getting the bug and wanted to know what would be the best scenario for them going forward on their next watch. They wanted to purchase pre-owned, and the comments lit up. They lit up with, go to Chrono 24, stay away from here, stay away from there. And it became very obvious to me that most people don't really understand what's happening on the used market, meaning that if you see a watch on Chrono 24, that seller, it's almost 99% likely that seller also has that same watch posted on eBay. So what I'm saying is, really, it doesn't matter the platform you use. I comment after comment after comment said stay away from eBay because there's a bunch of scammers. As long as you get authentication, and eBay has authentication, over $2,000, they do it automatically. Under $2,000, you can pay $80 and get it authenticated. As long as you do an authentication, it doesn't really matter where you purchase. So, one of my don'ts, unless you have a certain passion about a watch. In other words, when we're speaking brands, my ball that I have sitting here, I have had a passion for this brand for over 20 years. So even though this one broke all the rules, it was bought new, it was bought without trying it on. I never plan on selling it, so I'm never looking to get my money back, so it kind of didn't matter. If you do not have an emotional attachment and you're just looking for that watch that makes you feel that that's something special, I mean, that's what putting a watch on your wrist really does. It's almost the same feeling you get getting into a nice car. It gives you a sense of success. It makes you feel like you've accomplished something, especially for blue collar workers, in my opinion. You know, if you wrap a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 watch around your wrist, you've done something. You've either saved and sacrificed, or you've done something to move up the ladder to put yourself in a position to where you can afford to do so. Hopefully that's the case. Hopefully you're not out putting it on a credit card and going in debt, because that would be definitely on one of my don't lists. I would highly suggest that you always go with brands, again, unless you have a passion. If your grandfather wore a certain watch, or you have a connection to a watch, by all means, go with that watch brand. But if not, always go with a watch brand that has a ton of history and is respected. I would recommend looking at Omega, Breitling, Tudor, Longines. That way, if down the road you decide that that particular watch is not for you, you can get your money back. Another one of my don'ts that I've learned through experience is never substitute. And what I mean by that is, if you have a particular watch that you are absolutely in love with, for me, my 3-watch collection was always the Rolex Submariner, the Omega Speedmaster, and the Breitling Navitimer. Being that I could not afford the Rolex Submariner, multiple times I picked up watches that were like a Submariner. I picked up the Longines Hydro Conquest simply because, to me, it had the appearance of a Rolex Submariner. And I would highly suggest never doing that, because the bottom line is, while it is a very nice watch, every time I wore it, I reminded myself that it was not a Rolex Submariner. So, one of my don'ts is never buy a watch that would substitute another watch that you would like to have. I briefly touched on it, but I would highly suggest you never purchase a watch without first having the ability to try it on. I can't stress this enough. I have bought several watches that, when they showed up, the moment of opening the watch box, I was so excited. I thought it was just going to end. No, it wasn't. I purchased an Omega Speedmaster Racing 40 millimeter, and I purchased it on eBay without ever trying on the racing. I assumed because of this watch, it's a 40 mil. I thought, well, you know, I like the way it fits on the wrist. I'll probably like the way that one fits on the wrist. When it arrived, it was so underwhelming because the bezel took up so much real estate. The dial just seemed really tiny. And to be honest, it felt kind of like a girl's watch. I wore it several times and ultimately used it as a trade-in. So always, 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 if you can, try on a watch, especially if you're looking at thousands of dollars. The last thing you want to do is spend more money than you ever thought you would spend on a watch, and then it's and not wearing the way that you would like it to wear. Okay, and lastly on my don'ts, and this one is super important, do not buy vintage until you know what you're doing. And by vintage, I mean like, oh my God, look at this 1960s Omega I can pick up for $800. Don't do it. If you're talking about, you know, a 2005 Breitling Chronomat that you can pick up for $2,000, by all means, pick it up, because you can take that to any watch repair shop and get it fixed. But some of these vintage watches, they have parts that are no longer available. You really have to know what you're doing to get into vintage watches. Another thing is, a ton of them are faked, and if they're not faked, they redo the dials, they polish them, just stay away from vintage. Stay away from vintage until you know what you're doing. So for a quick rundown, let's go over real quick. Always buy pre-owned. You can step into a Breitling for a couple $1,000s. Always get them authenticated. Never substitute. That one's important. Always try them on if you can, because trust me, 40 millimeters is not the same across, different. A 40 millimeter dive watch wears different than a 40 millimeter dress watch. We'll put it that way. So always try them on if you can. Stay away from vintage until you know what you're doing. Always buy pre-owned. eBay's completely fine. I forgot to mention box and papers. To me, honestly, unless you're getting up into multiple thousands of dollars. It's just simply not that important. I thought it was super important in the beginning. Then all of a sudden I was looking at a collection of boxes, and I have a Longines over here that the watch was $1,000, and I have a ball over here where the watch was $1,300, and you start realizing you're collecting a ton of boxes, so you have boxes and the card for a watch that if you sold, you'd be lucky to get $500 for. So, papers, box. If you're looking at $3,000 or more, I would say absolutely make sure that it's there, because it will help with the value of that watch when you decide to get rid of it. I think for the most part, that's going to kind of wrap it up. So if you're still here, thank you so much for hanging out with me. The channel's new. I'd appreciate if you subscribe, give us a like, maybe leave a comment, and I'll see you on the next one.